Hey everybody, and welcome back to the DenziBlitz here on the ECS Network. I'm your host, Mike. I'm getting my shirt straightened out. Today, we've got more of Uchuu Keiji Shaider, Space Sheriff Shaider, coming your way. We're going to be checking out and talking about episodes 6 through 11 today on the show. But before I get too much into that, just a couple of quick notes. Of course, while you're here, hit that red subscribe button. That helps us out a lot. If you like the video, give us the thumbs up. If you don't, give us the thumbs down. Feedback is good. Just either way, let us know why. Leave your comments down below. And I want to give a shout out. I'm going to murder your first name here, buddy. It's Jone. I don't know if it's Joni or Joan or Jean or how you say it. Correct me. Let me know how to say your name down the road here. But he left some comments on our first installment of our look at Uchuu Keiji Shaider. Want to let us know that Shaider is the most famous of all the metal heroes in the Philippines, which is where he's from. But that Zydo pretty much just sucks. He said that he'd watched, or she, I don't know, male or female, but let us know that they watched a handful of episodes, and it's basically a TV soap opera with a little bit of action and maybe some fighting stuff in there somewhere, just some trappings. But basically said that the network GMA7, which is the network that aired Zydo, had a director who had no knowledge of tokusatsu heroes, didn't help with any of the funding for special effects or polished suits or good stunt actors, and that basically television in the Philippines is sort of oversaturated with TV drama, soap opera kind of stuff. I hate to hear that, buddy, but you know what? That's what YouTube is for, so among other things. So we're here, and hopefully you'll be joining us for the ride and giving your insightful commentary on Shaider from one of the countries where it was undoubtedly one of the most famous, as you said, the most famous of all the metal heroes. So let's talk here about the episodes we're looking at today, episodes 6 through 11. We got 6 episodes to go through here today. For my money, better than the first 5 I watched. These episodes, episode 6, Counterattack of the Strange Cooking. Episode 7, Have You Seen the Girl's Hallucination? Episode 8, Rebellious Girl from the Stars. Episode 9, I Hate the Blue Boys Band. Episode 10 is House of Twilight. And episode 11, Leave It to Annie. If you want some detailed synopses of these episodes, then I would encourage you to do some searching around on the internet. Wikipedia, Google, those are your friends. I'm going to focus on kind of the likes and dislikes and just some general look. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the plots of these episodes as I go through and what I really liked and didn't like. I'll be honest, first and foremost, episode 6 to me was largely forgettable. So it had a plot, it had something to do with food. So not a whole lot really for me to say about that one. Episode 7... there were a lot of things that stood out to me and I noticed as just improvements overall for the show thus far. One, the composite shots are getting better. We'll start with the visual. The composite shots are getting better here. One of the things I loved about Space Sheriff Gavin had some tremendous special effects to it, especially for a show that was made in 1982. I have not seen Charavan, so I don't know about it, but although I've been encouraged to try and find it, and I am actively looking for some fan subs of Space Sheriff Charavan. If you know where I can find some, please do not put it in the comments below, but rather direct message us here at the ECS Network here on YouTube. The reason I ask that you do not, that you do not post it in the comments is we sort of have a standing policy against saying where we get fan subs of different shows. Just because, one, the information is readily available, and two, some of the places where we do locate our fan subs of shows that have not been released in America have either had checkered pasts when it comes to posting things that are copywritten, or B, are still doing so. And that's not something that we condone or encourage. If it's out in the United States and you are a viewer in the United States, if it is out in your home country and you are a viewer in your home country, support your local releases. That's how you will get more of it in the future. So, anywho's, the composite shots here are better. Specifically, the shots of Scheider's ship, the Vavalos, in space. I really am enjoying the improvement of these effects. It almost feels as if they were finding their way with this show. I don't know if they had a new production cast, or crew rather. I don't know if they had some new effects houses helping out with some of the scenes, but it feels as if they are just feeling their way back through it. But there are certainly some improvement here. Something that is seen in multiples of these episodes, particularly episode 7 and I believe 11, is the use of artwork in some places. Now, this is something that's going to make some people laugh. If you are a jaded viewer, if you're someone who really can't deal with aged effects or anything of that nature, but it's something that I admire very much here, which is there are some scenes, particularly episode 7 uses it to show some basically some mutated animals, and then episode 11 uses it to show some kids who will grow up and take over different political offices and things like that. I appreciate the fact that they're using this artwork, which realistically isn't a whole heck of a lot more than concept art, like high-end concept art at its core. But they're using that to illustrate some stuff in flashes of basically still photos kind of thing. It gets the story they're wanting to tell across, and I admire that. I would rather see an artist, whether that is a TV artist, movie artist, what have you, but I'd rather see the artist tell the story through whatever means are most effective to them, as opposed to whatever is the most accepted means and it look worse. This is one of the things I always applaud Garo for. Garo and Keita Mamiya, the creator-director of Garo, in the early seasons, CG, wasn't terribly good for the most part, especially for some of the uses they were using it for in Japan for Toku TV. And 2, they really didn't have a massive budget to work off of. I mean, Garo was largely, it was an unproven property. So they wind up using CG, though, in some instances, and it looks dodgy. But they use it because it's the most effective tool to tell the story, even though it's going to look worse than if they shot it some other way. You could either do it another way and compromise your story, or you could do it this way and compromise the visuals. I'd rather you compromise the visuals. So we saw that in these episodes of Shaider. I appreciate that. I'm going to say this. Some of the other stuff in here I like. The dogfight footage. We get this to see Sharavan's essentially starfighter, for lack of a better term, the Sky Cheyenne, and the dogfight footage with that is not bad. Some of the aerial fight footage has been a sticking point for me in the early episodes. In fact, there's a scene that's in the opening credits that is my example for how bad some of the compositing can be in the show, where you have the Vavalos and you have the enemy fighters passing down, crashing, and in a perfect world, the shot would have the enemy ship crashing behind, and you would see sort of the hero ship come in between, and the smoke trail would go accordingly, but instead the whole smoke trail and everything obscures the hero ship, and it frankly looks bad. But for the Sky Cheyenne, it looks a lot better. Some of the targeting scope shots, those are pretty cool, very reminiscent of some Star Wars stuff. Some video game footage, but you know what? It looks good. It works for what they're doing here. They're getting a little more creative with the transformation sequences. This was something I really liked in Gavin when they did it, where Gavin got creative with it. Where he would be in movement and doing something and then transform, or transforming mid-jump, or what have you, or while dodging an attack. Here we actually see Shaider transform in the middle of delivering an attack. He's actually in mid-kick when he transforms, and the way they execute it, it's not seamless, but it's close. And so they're having some fun and playing with it. I like that. The footage of the Strange Realm in this batch of episodes, again, is getting better. A lot of the first 5 episodes, again, it almost felt like it was either a different effects house, or people just experimenting or trying to figure out how to do it, that it might not have been the same crew. But it's getting better, because a lot of the early footage looked more like just putting a filter over a camera and shooting in a rock quarry, and it looked like just, frankly, really bad day for night shots. But here, it's a little more of the studio stuff. It's a little more of the composite with artwork stuff. It's a little more of the, when they do shoot outside, they'll put something up to just make it look weird. There's a lot more of that, which is a carryover from Gavin. And if I compare this show to Gavin a lot, it's because this is the third and final part of the Space Sheriff trilogy. This is the same world as Gavin, just a couple of years later. So there should be some consistency there. The practical prop for the laser blade that we see more of in these episodes, I'd never liked the practical prop for Gavin's laser blade. I didn't dislike it, but it was painfully obvious that it's a different prop. And it's going to be, because the laser blade is nothing more than the prop sword with the blade rotoscoped off with animated glowing blue blade on it. And this is the same for Gavin as it is for Shaider and from Charavan. But Gavin's practical laser blade really just looked like he was flailing around with a fluorescent light tube that had a handle on it. And it was A, very thick, and B, inordinately bright, brighter than the rotoscoping effect. Here it's almost the opposite, but it's not necessarily a problem. It's, for one, it's blue, so good on you there. It's the same color as the laser blade effect, where Gavin's wasn't quite. But also, I really like the fact that here, with the movement and the stancing and the staging of the shots, about the only real visible way of knowing that this is a physical prop as opposed to the rotoscope version, aside from the obviousness of it just moves smoother, and so you don't have some of the jerkiness of the animation that can occur on occasion, is that the handle is significantly longer. And that's really the only way you can tell. And I'm sure that was just to store whatever the power source was for the blade, like the batteries or whatnot. Although the suit actor does a pretty good job of trying to hide it, the actual blade, the main prop, the handle is no more than 2 hands. And so where the practical prop, the practical laser blade that lights up, is probably a hand larger. So it's probably more like this long. But this is the way he holds it. He holds it still with one hand at the top of the handle and one at the bottom of the sword grip, so that at the very least, when you see the position of his hands, it kind of tries to hide it a little bit. So I appreciate that. One of the things that I thought was the most unique things I saw in these episodes, and we see it a little bit in the first 5, I just forgot to mention it, is that Shaider's laser blade has a power that we never saw out of Gavin's, although not always when it's in laser form. It can do it even as a regular sword, which is essentially like it has a ribbon form. I actually really dig that. Superheroes who have swords are pretty commonplace in tokusatsu. And we can thank in part of that the Japanese do have a rich martial history and a feudal history with the samurai and so on. So sword play has a large place in their history in Japan. So I really dig that. And I really dig just this ribbon effect. Newer tokusatsu shows have done something similar with a segmented sword that could extend out and whip around, but usually it's done with CG, and it's not overly great. Here, it literally is just a metallic ribbon. So some of the moves and whatnot look more rhythmic gymnastic-like, but it really does work for what they use it for, and it's pretty darn cool. They don't abuse it. They don't overuse it. He uses it if he needs something like a whip or a rope. So it works out really well. I think it's a really cool twist and an idea. And one of the things that just made me sit there and scratch my head watching some of the earlier episodes, they subvert in about three, maybe four of the episodes I've watched out of this batch. The giant monster, the monster fight should be the climax of the episode. So when they're in the strange realm, Shaider's equivalent of Maku space, why then does this giant floating head monolith with a cannon mounted on it show up that he has to destroy after he's destroyed the monster? You get the sense or the vibe that whatever that is essentially the receiver or the generator that creates this strange realm, or the gateway to the strange realm. But what happens here, but pacing-wise, it's awkward for him to blow up the monolith after heroically defeating the monster. Here, in about half the episodes, he instead destroys the monolith before destroying the monster. He blows it up like first thing after he gets there. From a storytelling standpoint, it may not make a whole lot of sense if blowing up the monolith is what gets him out of the dimension. But from a pacing standpoint of satisfying action, it's much better. So I like that. A few other little things here that we're going to hit on that I liked, and then I'm going to hit on some stuff that I didn't care for too much. We'll say this. Also, we get to see the Blue Hawk, which is his motorcycle, outside of the strange dimension. Siberian, the motorcycle of Gavin, his bike, we don't see outside of outside of Maku space overly much. It's not his primary mode of transportation in the series. Here, we get established in these few episodes that the Blue Hawk motorcycle is Shaider's primary mode of transportation when he's transformed, whether he's in the strange dimension or not. So I dig that too. Let's talk about a couple of things that I just didn't care for. And then I'm going to get on to my honest to goodness 2 favorite things that I've seen out of these episodes. First and foremost, this show still has no overarching plot line. I don't typically expect a meta plot from a tokusatsu show this old. I honestly don't. But Gavin ruined me for that. With this being the same universe, with this being presumably a lot of the same writing and production team, I haven't researched that yet, but I intend to after seeing these episodes. And now being 11 in. That show ruined me for that because there was an overarching meta plot and it was established quickly. Even though, like all tokusatsu shows of this era and earlier and a little bit after, it's very episodic in nature. You still had characters with motivation that were tied to one another and so on. As far as I can tell, Shaider has no ties at all to the bad guys other than he is the cop assigned to bring them in. Annie has more of a tie than he does, and I'll get to that in a minute. The general, Hessler, just pales compared to Hunter Killer. Hunter Killer had an interesting story going in. He had a definitive conflict with our hero, there was a history and you bought into it quickly. Hessler here is a dude in a goofy hat who has face paint sometimes, and sometimes it's a little different. It just doesn't really gel yet. So I'm still looking and hoping for some sort of meta plot that overarcs in some way. The closest thing we've got is we are starting to see more and more races and planets that the Fuma, our bad guys in this, have attacked, subjugated, or destroyed. We see one in the first few episodes. We see a couple more in these episodes. So that might be the running thing. And maybe eventually different people from these different worlds come together. Maybe. But even then, it really just is lacking for me, I'm afraid. So there is that. Visually, monster suits are hit and miss, and even if they weren't hit or miss, the monsters themselves have no meaning in this show. Thus far, 11 episodes in, the monsters don't have characters. It feels like they're there out of obligation, like you have to have a monster of the week. At least some of the Gavin monsters, I'm not saying all of them by any stretch, but at least some of them, one, were the masterminds in their own episodes. Here, that really hasn't happened. All the monsters are basically tools that are being used by the Fuma instead of people employed by the Fuma. So, and I'm generalizing because there's 11 episodes. There's like one or two exceptions, but when the majority are just realistically there because it's the formula, that bothers me a little bit. I don't know if something happened in Space Sheriff Shaider where the world knows what Space Sheriffs are now, but in Gavin himself, Retsu did a pretty good job of keeping that a secret identity. Unless I missed something, Shaider is absolute garbage at keeping a secret identity, because in probably 4 out of the 6 episodes I saw today, he says to a ordinary human being who has no clue what in the world is going on that he's a space sheriff, as if they should know what that even means. So I'm a little worried about that. One episode in particular, it had this issue to me, but it was bad enough that I wrote it down in my notes. Episode 7, there is this comedic interlude where Shaider winds up heading to Annie's aid, and this was in the episode Have You Seen the Girl's Hallucination? He's heading to Annie's aid. He gets cut off by his veterinarian friend and what have you to hunt down his pet pig. It's a comedic interlude in the middle of what was a serious scene with build-up. And it just, all the momentum that was being built in the episode up to that point come to a screeching halt. Because they were trying to hunt down a pig. And the little interlude was maybe 45 seconds to a minute, tops. But it was enough to sit there and have me scratch my head and go, why is this in the middle of this episode? Now, let's talk about... and one more thing. And this is a visual thing here that does bother me a wee bit. Shaider's ship just doesn't look as cool as Gavin's on the inside. Aside from the fact that Gavin's ship, Dolgaron, had, frankly, a much more expansive interior. But here, Shaider's ship, I think the thing that I finally isolated that just doesn't look as cool to me are the buttons and the readouts. They have text all over them. That was not so much the case on Gavin's ship. Most of the buttons were just translucent, plastic-colored buttons. Very Star Trek the original series-ish in that regard, I guess. But it had this way of looking retro-futuristic. And if you were in 1982, probably just futuristic. With Charivan, they all have labels on them, but it's pretty much to the naked eye gibberish on all the buttons and readouts, and so it's a little awkward. Now, let's talk about something here I've really, really enjoyed. Number one, we are starting to see some actual police work in this show. I love that when the theme of the show coincides with what the characters are doing. It's fantastic. This is one of the reasons I loved Space Patrol, Power Rangers SPD, and Tokusou Sentai Deca Ranger. I love both of those shows. This is one of the things I really dug about Gavin, and is one of the things I'm starting to like about Shaider. We're seeing actual police work, investigation, stakeout. In this case, even going so far to take high-tech sensors to like a concert, specifically in the boy band episode, to monitor and record and see what in the world is affecting people. I like that, and it really stands out. The one thing so far that has stood out more than anything else in this show to me, and I mean just amazingly so, I have to give credit to this. Naomi Morinaga was the actress who played Annie in this show. If anyone who comes across her at a convention or a meetup, if she ever does those, makes appearances or anything like that, somebody just remind her how awesome she is in this show. Because 6 episodes, she's stealing the show, folks. It's feeling more and more and more after these 6 episodes like you could call the show Space Sheriff Annie and get away with it. One, she's doing her own stunts in a lot of places, not just fight scenes. And her fight scenes look good and crisp, which is amazing. She gets across the character very well of this driven space sheriff who lost her world and she doesn't want to see this happen to any other planet. I'm getting that. In episode 8, she's even hanging off the roof of a car while it's moving. And I'm not talking about the character, I'm talking about the actress. There's one wide shot where the car is moving at some speed, and that might have been a stunt actress. That might have been a stunt man on top. Because the hair obscured the face a little bit there. But there's a closer up scene where you can tell the car is still moving, but you can clearly see that, no, this is our hero actress on top of this thing. So she just is knocking it out of the park. All the way down to our episode, Leave It to Annie, episode 11, the last one we watched today. Number 1, she got her own fight song. How many times does the human, in this case, not transformable hero, how often does our unsuited hero, unpowered hero, get their own insert fight action song? That really doesn't happen in Toku that much, but she has her own song, her own theme, so to speak. I like that. This is not a damsel in distress. In episode 11, she goes undercover in disguise to purposely get captured by the Fuma. When she gets found out, they throw her in a sack and dump her in the ocean. We're not fooling around here. This isn't some elaborate death trap. It's no, put her in a sack, tie the sack off, throw her in the water, let her drown to death. We're done with her. And they do it. They go through with it. But when she gets to the bottom, she had secreted away in a fingernail, which you actually see her put on earlier in the episode without knowing that it's anything other than just part of the disguise. I love that. So they come back to it. She takes it off, and it's a razor blade, and she cuts her way out of the bag, swims to the surface. The whole time, I would have bet you money that Shaider was going to save her. And it was the damsel in distress. He's got to save Annie before he can stop the bad guys. No, she saved herself, went back in, got... there were kids being held hostage episode. She gets the kids out. She rescues them. She contacts Shaider to let Shaider know where everything's going down. And she's the one that puts them on the boat and gets away while Shaider distracts the bad guys. in probably 4 of these episodes, she's the bloody hero, and Shaider just shows up to do the heavy, shows up to back clean up at the end because she doesn't have a cool laser blade and a suit of armor. So, for better or worse, I'll say this part, it's feeling more like it's her show than Shaider's. I've seen things like this before. I always joke around and say that if you ever watch the show Kamen Rider Kabuto, the main character of the show is a character named Gatak. They just named it after Kabuto because he had the fanciest armor. Same sort of thing here, I feel. So, but I really dig Annie, and I really like that character. And right now, she might be my favorite non-powered hero character in a tokusatsu show, period. Not sidekick, not something like that. She is treated as Shaider's true partner. She's not the damsel in distress. She is incredibly capable. He does not go out of his way to protect her or shield her from things. He fights side by side with her, and she holds her own as much as he does. That's amazing, and I really like that. So, 11 down. Next go-round, I'm going to be checking out up through, I believe it's going to be episode 16 next time. I think I got 5 to go next go-round. We're going to be checking out Perfect Score, Genta's True Identity, The Gold Medal Tricked People, The Mutants' Love, Marine Blue of the Seashore, and The Surprised Alien Life Forms. We're going to go through episode 16 next time here on the DenziBlitz. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for watching. Once again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us the thumbs up, thumbs down, leave some comments down below for us because I love hearing from folks as they watch these shows with us. And if you'd like to support us here at the ECS Network, you can do that by going over to cafepress.com/ECS Network. Pick yourself up a cool t-shirt, maybe something like the Godzilla Big G style shirt that I'm wearing here with the DenziCaster logo done up like the old Godzilla logo, or we've got a Space Sheriff look DenziCaster shirt over there too. Maybe I'll wear that one next week. But check that out. Any proceeds from that go to help us here on the channel. They don't line anybody's pockets. We have a brand new microphone that lets us sound better than ever here on DenziCaster and on Rage Quit Radio and the other sister shows, and some lighting. You guys help with all of that. And there's one other thing I'd like you guys to do for me. Jump over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/DenziCaster, because I need help picking out what I'm watching next. The last time I left myself in you guys' hands, y'all picked Power Rangers Dino Charge. Good on you, kids, because that one was really good, and I really enjoyed it. So you guys get to pick what I'm watching next, and the poll will end next week. It's not so much a poll as it is there's a video, and you comment on the video. Let me know if you want me to watch something from Ultraman, Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, I think it was Garo, or Other. And if you say Other, then that means it's going to be something off the wall like Keitai Sosokan 7 or Ryukendo or something like that. Next time, thank you so very much for watching. I'll see you next time on the DenziBlitz. Be good, guys.